You are really going to eat that alone? The voice came from the edge of the sidewalk, rough but not aggressive, just curious. Lily Carter did not look up right away. Her fingers were already working, thumbs pressing into the dented lid of her metal lunchbox until it popped open with a soft, hollow click. Steam did not rise from it. It never did. Inside sat a small portion of rice, a few wilted vegetables, and half a boiled egg, the yolk slightly gray at the edges. The streetlight above her flickered, casting a tired yellow glow over the cracked concrete of Skid Row. Sirens echoed somewhere distant, blending into the low hum of traffic rolling down Alameda Street. Lily shifted on the curb, pulling her jacket tighter against the November chill. Then, without hesitation, she split the food cleanly down the middle, careful, precise, like she had done it 1,000 times before. "No," she said simply, finally glancing up. Her eyes landed on him for just a second. Scruffy beard, worn hoodie, hands shoved deep into the pockets like he was trying to disappear into himself. "I am not." She held out half the portion toward him. No speech, no questions, just an offering, steady and quiet. Ethan Blake hesitated. For a fraction of a second, something in his posture shifted, like he had expected a performance, a pause, a glance over the shoulder to see who was watching. But there was nothing. No camera crew stepping out. No whispered cues. Just her hand, slightly trembling from the cold, holding out food she clearly did not have much of. "You do this with everyone?" he asked, taking it slowly, like the container might vanish if he moved too fast. Lily shrugged, already bringing her half closer, not eating yet, just holding it. "Not everyone." She looked back down at the food, her thumb pressing lightly into the edge of the rice, as if measuring it again. "Just when it matters." The wind picked up, carrying the sharp scent of exhaust, and something burnt from a nearby food truck shutting down for the night. A shopping cart rattled somewhere behind them. Ethan lowered himself onto the curb beside her, the concrete cold even through his jeans. He glanced at her lunchbox. The metal was scratched, dented inward on one side like it had taken a hit years ago and never recovered. Faintly, etched into the surface, were the uneven words, "For two, always." "Why split it?" he asked, quieter this time. Lily did not answer right away. Her jaw tightened just enough to notice if you were looking for it. Then she exhaled slowly, like she was letting something go that never really left. "Because I did not once." That was it. No explanation. No story. Just a sentence that landed heavier than it sounded. She took a bite, small, measured. Ethan watched her chew, the way she paused between bites, like she was making it last on purpose. Around them, the city kept moving, indifferent, loud, alive. But here, in that narrow slice of sidewalk under a flickering light, everything felt strangely still. If you are watching this right now, go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you do not miss what happens next, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are and where you are watching from, because this moment, right here, is only the beginning of something neither of them sees coming. Ethan looked down at the food in his hand, then back at her. "You always share like that." Lily shook her head slightly, a faint, almost invisible smile pulling at one corner of her mouth. "No," she said. "I learned to." Ethan did not finish the food right away. He held it in his hand, feeling the faint warmth fading into the cold night air, like it had a clock ticking inside it. Lily had already taken 2 more small bites, each one measured, like she was rationing not just the food but the moment itself. A bus roared past, headlights cutting across their faces for a split second before disappearing down the block. "You got somewhere to be?" he asked, more out of instinct than curiosity. Lily shook her head. Wiping her fingers on a napkin, she folded back into the lunchbox with careful precision. "Not tonight." She snapped the lid shut and ran her thumb over the dent again, almost unconsciously. Ethan noticed it this time, the way her touch slowed there, like she was tracing something invisible. "Shelter closes at 7, she added after a beat. "If you are not in line by 6:30, they give your spot away." Ethan glanced at his watch without thinking. 6:58. He looked back at her. "And you just gave it up?" Lily shrugged, but it was not casual. It was practiced. There was a woman with a kid. She had been waiting longer. The way she said it made it sound like a rule, not a choice. Ethan leaned back slightly, bracing his hands against the curb. That is not exactly a winning strategy. Lily let out a quiet breath that almost passed for a laugh, but did not quite make it there. Neither is keeping everything and still ending up here. For a moment, neither of them spoke. A man pushed a cart piled with blankets past them, wheels squeaking with every turn. Somewhere down the street, someone shouted, then laughed too loudly. The city did not pause for anyone. Ethan looked at her again, this time more carefully. Her shoes were worn thin at the soles, the fabric fraying near the toes. There was a faint stain on the sleeve of her jacket, something dark and old. But her posture was straight. Not defensive, not slouched. Just steady. So what? You just walk around handing out your dinner every night? He said. Lily shook her head. Not every night. She leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on her knees. Some nights I eat it all. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What makes tonight different? Lily did not answer right away. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was worn soft at the edges, like it had been opened and closed too many times. She did not show it to him, just held it between her fingers. Some nights, she said slowly, you remember something you wish you had done differently. Ethan watched her thumb press into the fold, over and over, like she was trying to flatten something that would not stay down. And splitting your food fixes that? He asked. There was no judgment in his voice, but there was something else. Curiosity, maybe, or disbelief. Lily glanced at him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. No, she said, but not splitting it did not help either. The words hung there, quiet but heavy. Ethan shifted slightly, the concrete, biting through his jeans now, but he did not move away. You always carry that thing? He asked, nodding toward the lunchbox. Lily followed his gaze and nodded once. Yeah. She tapped it lightly. Only thing I kept when I lost my place. Why that? Ethan asked. Lily's fingers hovered over the etched words for a second before she closed her hand into a loose fist. Because I almost threw it away once, she said. And then I realized I should have thrown something else away instead. Ethan frowned slightly. What does that mean? Lily exhaled, long and slow, like she was deciding how much to say. Then she shook her head. It means I'm still figuring it out. A cold gust of wind swept down the street, lifting loose paper and dust into the air. Lily pulled her jacket tighter again, her shoulders tensing just a little this time. Ethan noticed the shift. Not big, just enough to tell that whatever she was holding on to was not as distant as she made it sound. You got family? He asked, softer now. Lily's jaw tightened again, more noticeably this time. She looked out toward the street instead of at him. Had, she said. Just one word. No follow-up. No explanation. Ethan nodded slowly, like he understood more than she had said, even if he did not. He looked down at the empty container in his hand, then back at her closed lunchbox. You know, he said after a moment, most people would not give away their last meal. Lily let out a quiet breath through her nose, almost a sigh. Most people do not remember the night they should have. That time, she did not look away. Her eyes met his, steady, unflinching. And for the first time since he sat down, Ethan felt something shift inside him, subtle but undeniable, like a crack forming in something he had always assumed was solid. Ethan turned the empty container over in his hands once more before handing it back, slower this time, like he was returning something that did not quite belong to him. Lily took it without a word, but instead of slipping it into her bag, she set it on her lap and opened it again, even though there was nothing left inside. Her fingers moved with quiet familiarity, pressing along the seams, adjusting. The hinge that stuck slightly on the left side. A faint metallic creak answered her touch. It is older than it looks, she said, almost to herself. Ethan watched her, the way her attention narrowed, shutting out the noise around them. Looks like it has been through a lot, he replied. Lily gave a small nod. She tilted the box so the light caught the surface just right, revealing more than scratches this time. Underneath the dents, faint lines crossed each other, thin and uneven, like someone had carved them by hand without measuring. Not decoration. Something else. I did that, she said, tracing one of the marks with her fingertip. With a nail. Took me 3 tries to get the letters straight. Ethan leaned in slightly, squinting. For 2, always, he read quietly. The words sat unevenly across the metal, each letter pressed in with different depth. Some deeper where the pressure must have slipped. That a promise or a reminder? Lily's hand stilled. For a second, the street noise seemed to dip, like everything pulled back just enough to leave space for whatever she might say next. Instead, She reached into the box and lifted a thin piece of cardboard tucked beneath the lining. It was cut to fit perfectly, edges worn smooth from use. She flipped it over, revealing faint pencil lines, barely visible unless you looked close. "I measure with this," she said. Ethan frowned slightly. "Measure what?" Lily set the cardboard back into place, then closed the lid halfway, leaving a small gap. "Everything," she said. "So it stays even." She tapped the lid lightly, then pressed it shut. The clicks sounded final, sharper than before. Ethan leaned back, absorbing that. "You really think it makes a difference?" Lily looked out at the street again, her gaze settling somewhere beyond the passing cars. "It makes it not happen again." The way she said it carried more weight than the words themselves. Ethan did not push right away. Instead, he followed her line of sight, watching a flickering neon sign across the street buzz in and out of brightness. "What happened?" he asked eventually, his voice lower now, less like a question and more like something placed carefully between them. Lily's fingers tightened slightly around the lunchbox handle. Not enough to shake, just enough to show she had heard him. She did not look at him this time. "There was a blackout," she said after a long pause. "Summer. Real hot. Power went out across half the block." Her voice stayed steady, but slower now, like each word had to pass through something before it came out. "We had one flashlight. One sandwich." She stopped there, her thumb pressing against the dent again, harder this time. Ethan did not interrupt. "I told him to wait," she continued. "Said we would split it later when it cooled down." A car alarm chirped somewhere nearby, sharp and out of place, then fell silent. Lily blinked once, like the sound had pulled her back too quickly. "I ate it," she said. No build-up, no softening, just the truth, dropped flat between them. Ethan's expression shifted, not dramatically, but enough. "You were a kid," he said, almost reflexively. Lily shook her head, small but definite. "Old enough to know better." Her grip loosened slightly, and she set the lunchbox beside her on the curb, careful not to let it tip. "He got sick that night," she added, her voice quieter now, not weaker, just further away. "Heat, no food. Mom was working a double. By the time she got back, she did not finish. She did not need to." Ethan exhaled slowly, the air visible in the cooling night. He looked at the lunchbox, then at her, then back again. The object felt different now. Not just a container. Not even just a reminder. Something closer to a boundary she carried with her. "So this," he said, nodding toward it. "That is how you fix it?" Lily's lips pressed together for a moment, then eased. "It is how I make sure I do not choose wrong again." Ethan let that sit. The idea settled somewhere uncomfortable, somewhere he had not expected to go tonight. He shifted his weight, glancing down the street where a group of people gathered near a food distribution truck packing up for the night. "And if there is nothing to split?" he asked, not challenging, just testing the edge of her logic. Lily followed his gaze, then looked back at him. "Then you figure out how to make something out of." "Nothing," she said. "Or you go without." There was no hesitation in her voice. No doubt. Just a quiet certainty that made it harder to dismiss than anything louder would have been. Ethan studied her for a second longer, then gave a small nod, like he had just been handed a rule he did not fully understand yet. Somewhere above them, the streetlight flickered again, buzzing softly before steadying. And in that dim, uneven glow, the dented lunchbox sat between them, closed, silent, and carrying far more than it looked like it could hold. Ethan stood up first, brushing dust off his hands like the movement might reset something, but it did not. He glanced down the street again, then back at Lily, who had already secured the lunchbox inside her worn canvas bag, the strap looped twice around her wrist, as if she had learned not to trust loose ends. "There is a place 2 blocks over," he said, nodding toward a dim intersection. "They do late cleanup. Sometimes they have leftovers." Lily did not respond immediately. She shifted her weight, testing the strap, then rose to her feet in one smooth motion. "I know the place," she said. Her tone was neutral, but not dismissive, just aware. They walked without agreeing to it, falling into step with a half-foot of space between them, enough to feel deliberate. The sidewalk narrowed as they turned the corner, forcing them closer for a moment before widening again. A delivery truck idled nearby, its engine rattling low, headlights washing over stacked crates of unused produce. The back door of a small community kitchen stood open, lights spilling out onto the pavement. Inside, Volunteers moved quickly, stacking trays, scraping pans, the end-of-day rhythm already underway. Lily slowed before reaching the entrance, her eyes scanning the room, taking inventory without stepping inside. Ethan noticed the hesitation. "You not going in?" he asked. She shook her head slightly. "They keep count," she said. "If you were not on the list earlier, they remember." Ethan followed her gaze. A clipboard sat near the door, a woman in a hairnet flipping through pages, checking names as people approached. "So we wait," he said. Lily did not argue. But she did not settle either. She leaned against the brick wall, arms folded, eyes on the ground like she was measuring time in something other than minutes. Ethan watched the volunteers inside. A man in an apron scraped a tray of uneaten pasta into a large bin, the sound of metal against metal sharp in the night air. Without thinking, Ethan stepped forward. "I will grab something," he said. Lily's hand moved fast, catching his sleeve before he took a second step. Not hard, just enough. He looked down at her hand, then up at her face. Her expression had shifted again, not angry, not afraid, but firm in a way that did not invite negotiation. "Do not," she said quietly. "They are closing." Ethan frowned. "They are throwing it out." Lily's grip tightened just slightly, then released. "It is not ours," she said. The words came out simple, but there was something underneath them, something practiced, like a rule she had followed long enough that it no longer needed explaining. Ethan glanced back at the tray, then at the bin. Food, still good, being scraped away without a second thought. He hesitated, caught between instinct and something new he did not quite understand yet. "So we just stand here?" he asked. Lily stepped past him, moving closer to the side of the building where a narrow alley opened up. "We wait for what is given," she said over her shoulder. Ethan exhaled sharply, not quite frustrated, but not comfortable either. He followed anyway. The alley was quieter, shielded from the street by stacked crates and a metal dumpster pushed to one side. A single bulb hung above the back door, flickering with a faint buzz. Lily positioned herself near the wall, not directly in sight of the volunteers, but close enough to hear when the door opened. Ethan leaned against a crate, arms crossed loosely. "You have rules for everything," he said. Lily glanced at him briefly. "No," she replied. "Just for the things that matter." The door creaked open behind them. A volunteer stepped out carrying a small box, scanning the alley before spotting them. "Hey," she called softly. "We have a little extra." "Not much." Lily straightened, but did not move forward right away. She waited until the woman stepped closer, until the box was offered without hesitation, without condition. Only then did she reach out and take it. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady, respectful, not rushed. Ethan watched the exchange closely. No clipboard, no list, no performance, just a simple handoff. The volunteer gave a quick nod and disappeared back inside, the door shutting with a soft click. Lily opened the box carefully. Inside were two small portions, uneven, hastily packed. Without looking up, she adjusted them slightly, instinctively aligning the portions, her fingers moving with the same precision as before. Ethan noticed it immediately. "You are doing it again," he said. Lily did not stop. "It is not even," she replied. "It will be." Ethan let out a quiet breath, something between a laugh and disbelief. "You really cannot help it, can you?" Lily paused for just a second, then continued dividing. "No," she said. Then, after a beat, softer this time, "I do not try to." She handed him one portion, the slightly larger one this time, though it was subtle enough that most would not notice. Ethan did. He looked at the container, then back at her. "That is not equal," he said. Lily met his eyes, her expression unreadable but steady. "It is," she said. "For tonight." Ethan held her gaze for a second longer, then nodded slowly, accepting the piece without arguing. Somewhere in the distance, a siren rose and faded again, the city continuing its restless rhythm. But here, in the narrow alley with the flickering light overhead, something had shifted, not fully understood, not fully settled, but enough to change the space between them from distance into something else, something that neither of them had named yet. Ethan did not eat right away this time either. He held the container loosely, watching the faint steam curl up and disappear into the cold air, while Lily sat down on the low concrete ledge beside the alley wall, her movements quieter now, less guarded but not fully relaxed. She adjusted the strap of her bag again, looping it tighter around her wrist before setting it down beside her, always within reach. You always pick the alley? He asked after a moment, glancing around at the dim space, the flickering bulb overhead casting uneven shadows across the brick. Lily took a small bite, chewing slowly before answering. It is quieter, she said. People do not ask questions back here. Ethan nodded once, though his eyes stayed on her. You do not like questions? Lily shrugged, not dismissive, just honest. Depends on who is asking. The words hung there, not sharp, but not soft either. Ethan let out a faint breath, something close to a laugh, but quieter. Fair enough. He finally took a bite, slower than before, like he was paying attention now, not just to the food but to the act itself. Lily watched him briefly, then looked away, her gaze settling on the edge of the pavement where a small crack ran through the concrete. Her fingers traced it lightly, absent-minded but precise, following the line like she needed to see where it ended. You ever stay in one place long? He asked, breaking the silence again, but softer this time. Lily shook her head. Not really. She brushed her fingers against her jeans, then rested her hands in her lap. Places change. People change faster. Ethan tilted his head slightly. You sound like you have tested that theory. Lily let out a small breath through her nose, not quite a laugh. More like it tested me. She took another bite, smaller this time, like she was not as hungry anymore, or maybe just thinking more. Ethan leaned back against the crate behind him, the wood rough through his hoodie. So what was it before this, he asked. Before all this moving around. Lily did not answer right away. She closed the container halfway, her thumb resting on the lid as if she might shut it completely, but chose not to. Apartment, she said eventually. 1 bedroom. 2nd floor. Windows that did not close all the way in the summer. Ethan watched her face as she spoke, noticing how her expression shifted, not into a smile, but into something softer, more distant. Sounds normal, he said. Lily nodded once. It was. A pause settled between them, longer this time, but not uncomfortable. Just full. You miss it, he asked. Lily's fingers tightened slightly on the edge of the container. I miss who I was there, she said. Ethan frowned faintly. What does that mean? Lily glanced at him, then back down at the lunchbox sitting beside her. She reached over and tapped it lightly, once. I did not measure things back then, she said. Did not count bites. Did not split everything down the middle. Her voice stayed even, but there was a quiet weight behind it now. I just ate. Ethan shifted slightly, the crate creaking under his weight. And that changed everything. It was not a question. Lily did not correct him. Instead, she reached for the lunchbox again, opening it slowly this time, though there was nothing left inside. Her fingers moved over the cardboard insert, pressing it flat, smoothing it like it might wrinkle if she stopped paying attention. After that night, she said, almost under her breath, everything had to be even. Ethan watched her carefully, not interrupting, not pushing. The alley felt smaller now, quieter, like the rest of the city had stepped back just enough to let the moment sit. Does it ever feel enough? He asked after a while. Lily's hand paused mid-motion. She did not look up. No, she said simply. Then, after a beat, but it feels fair. Ethan let that settle, turning the idea over in his mind like he had done with the container earlier. Fair does not always fix things, he said. Lily nodded, almost immediately. I know. She closed the lunchbox again, this time fully, the click softer than before. But it keeps me from pretending it did not happen. Ethan exhaled slowly, his breath visible again in the cooling air. He glanced at her hands, then at the bag, then back at her face. You ever think about not carrying it? He asked, nodding toward the lunchbox. Lily followed his gaze, her expression unreadable for a second. Then she reached down and pulled the bag closer, resting her hand on top of it. Every time I pick it up, she said, and every time I put it back. Ethan studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod, like he understood more than he had a few hours ago, even if it was still incomplete. You are not the only one carrying something, he said quietly. Lily looked at him then, really. Looked this time, her eyes narrowing slightly, not suspicious, but curious in a way she had not been before. Yeah, she said. What are you carrying? Ethan held her gaze for a second, then looked away, his jaw tightening just slightly before relaxing again. Depends on the day, he replied. It was not an answer, but it was not nothing either. Lily did not press. She leaned back against the wall, her shoulder brushing the rough brick, her posture easing just a fraction. The space between them did not close, but it did not feel as deliberate anymore. Somewhere nearby, the back door opened again, voices drifting out briefly before fading as it shut. The night air grew colder, settling into their clothes, their skin, the space between words. Lily pulled her jacket tighter, then hesitated for a moment before shifting slightly closer to the crate, just enough to block the wind from one side. Ethan noticed, but did not comment. Instead, he adjusted his position too, angling himself so the breeze hit his back instead of hers. It was small, almost unnoticeable unless you were looking for it. Lily glanced at him once, then back down at her hands. "That is not even," she said quietly, almost out of habit. Ethan did not look at her. "Not everything has to be," he replied. Lily did not answer right away. Her fingers moved again, tracing the edge of the lunchbox through the fabric of her bag. Then, almost too soft to catch, she said, "I am still working on that." And for the first time, there was something in her voice that sounded less like a rule and more like a possibility, fragile but real, sitting between them in the dim light of the alley as the night stretched on. A faint click broke the quiet before either of them moved. It was not from the alley door this time. It came from somewhere deeper, sharper, mechanical. Lily's head turned first, not fast, but precise, like her body had learned to track small sounds before they became problems. Ethan noticed the shift and followed her gaze. Near the corner where the alley met the street, a black SUV idled with its headlights off, engine running low, almost silent, but not quite. Two figures stood just beyond the reach of the flickering bulb, partially hidden by shadow, their posture too still to belong to anyone waiting for food. Lily's fingers tightened slightly around the strap of her bag. "You expecting someone?" she asked, her voice level, but quieter than before. Ethan did not answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the vehicle, his jaw setting just enough to change the line of his face. For a moment, he looked like he was somewhere else entirely, not here on the concrete, not in this alley. Then he exhaled, slow, controlled. "No," he said, but it came a fraction too late. Lily caught it. Not the word. The timing. She followed his line of sight again, watching as one of the figures shifted, a subtle movement of a hand near their ear, like adjusting something small. A second later, a faint reflection caught the light. Glass. A lens. Her expression did not change right away, but something in her posture did. She straightened just slightly, creating space between them without stepping away. "That is not random," she said. "Not accusing. Just stating." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, his fingers lingering there longer than necessary. "They are, with me," he admitted. The words did not come easily. Lily's gaze moved from him to the SUV, then back again. She did not ask who or why. Not yet. Instead, she reached down slowly, picking up her bag and slipping the strap over her shoulder, tightening it once across her chest. A small, deliberate action. "Since when?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, then gave a small shake of his head, like the answer itself did not sit well with him. "Since before tonight." The alley felt narrower now, the air heavier, like something had shifted direction without warning. Lily nodded once, absorbing it. "So the questions," she said, her voice still even. "The watching, that was part of it." Ethan looked at her, really looked this time, and for the first time there was something close to uncertainty in his expression. "It started that way," he said. "It was supposed to be." He stopped, searching for the right word, then not finding one that did not sound worse than the truth. Lily waited, but not patiently, just still. When he did not finish, she did it for him. "A test," she said. "Not sharp, not loud, just accurate." Ethan's shoulders dropped a fraction, the smallest sign of something giving way. "Yeah." The word landed softer than before. Lily's eyes flickered briefly to the lunchbox inside her bag, then back to him. "Of what?" she asked. Ethan glanced toward the SUV again, then back at her, lowering his voice instinctively even though no one had moved closer. "People," he said. "How they respond. What they do when it costs them something." Lily held his gaze for a long second, then let out a quiet breath. Not disbelief. Not surprise. Something closer to recognition. "And you needed a camera for that?" she asked. Ethan did not answer right away. He looked down at his hands, then at the ground, then back up again, like each direction offered a different version of the truth. "I thought I did," he said finally. Lily nodded slowly once. Her expression did not harden, but it did change. The softness from earlier pulled back, replaced by something steadier, more distant. "So what am I?" she asked. "Footage." The words sat between them, heavier than anything she had said before. Ethan shook his head quickly. "No, that is not." He stopped himself again, realizing halfway through that denying it outright would not make it untrue. He exhaled, slower this time. "It was not supposed to be like this," he said. Lily's lips pressed together, not tight, but firm. "It never is," she replied. The SUV engine shifted slightly, a low hum adjusting as if someone inside had moved. Neither of them looked at it this time. Lily adjusted the strap of her bag again, her fingers brushing the outline of the lunchbox beneath the fabric. Then she stepped back, just one step, enough to mark the space clearly. "You should go," she said. Not angry, not emotional, just decided. Ethan did not move. "Lily," he started, but she shook her head once, cutting him off without raising her voice. "Do not," she said quietly. "Do not explain it like it is something different." The alley fell silent again, the flickering bulb buzzing faintly overhead. Ethan stood there for a moment longer, caught between staying and stepping away, between the version of himself that had started this and the one standing here now. Lily did not wait to see which one would win. She turned, adjusting her bag against her shoulder, and walked toward the far end of the alley, her pace steady, not rushed, not hesitant, just forward. And for the first time that night, Ethan did not follow. Lily had almost reached the end of the alley when the sound of a car door closing cut through the quiet behind her, sharper than it should have been. She slowed, not stopping, just enough to listen. Footsteps followed, steady, not rushed. Ethan did not call her name this time. He came up beside her, keeping a few feet of distance, like he had finally learned where the line was. For a few seconds, they walked in silence, the glow from the street ahead stretching long shadows across the pavement. "They are shutting it down," he said finally, his voice low, directed forward rather than at her. Lily kept walking. "The cameras?" she asked. "The whole thing," he replied. "Tonight." That made her stop. Not abruptly, but enough to break the rhythm. She turned slightly, not facing him fully, just enough to see his expression without offering hers completely. "Because of me?" she asked. Ethan shook his head once. "Because it does not work the way I thought it did." Lily studied him for a second, then looked past him toward the SUV, where one of the figures had stepped out, speaking quietly into a phone. "It works exactly how you built it," she said. "You just did not like what it showed you." Ethan let out a breath, something heavier this time. "It showed me something I did not account for." Lily's grip tightened on her bag strap again. "People who do not need an audience to decide who they are," she said. Ethan met her gaze, not defensive, but not stepping back either. "People who pay a price I cannot measure," he answered. That landed differently. Not an excuse. Not quite an apology either. Lily looked at him longer this time, searching for something. Maybe consistency, maybe sincerity. "And now what?" she asked. "You just walk away and call it insight?" Ethan shook his head again, slower. "No, I fix what I can." Lily let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh. But it did not carry humor. "You cannot fix this," she said, tapping lightly against her bag where the lunchbox rested. "You cannot balance something like that after the fact." Ethan's eyes followed the motion, then lifted back to her. "I am not trying to balance it," he said. "I am trying to stop pretending it can be." The words hung there, heavier than anything he had said before. Lily's expression shifted, not softening, but less certain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The street noise crept back in, distant engines, a siren far off, the low hum of a city that never paused long enough for anyone to resolve anything cleanly. "You said earlier," Ethan continued, "if there is nothing to split, you make something out of nothing." Lily's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is not the same thing," she said. "It is when the system is built to throw things away," he replied, nodding back toward the kitchen. "Food, people, choices. I was measuring the wrong part of it." Lily shook her head, a small movement, but firm. "You were controlling it," she said. "That is different." Ethan did not argue that. He let it sit, nodding once like he accepted the correction. "Yeah," he said. "I was." Another pause. The space between them felt sharper now, not wider, just more defined, like both of them could see the edges clearly. Lily shifted her weight, glancing down the street, as if deciding whether to keep walking or stay. "You had a choice," she said after a moment. "You could have just helped. No cameras. No tests." Ethan looked at her, something flickering across his face. Not quite regret, not quite defensiveness. "I did not trust it," he admitted. "Did not trust that it was real unless I could see it, prove it." Lily's gaze held his, steady, unflinching. "And now?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, then answered without looking away. "Now I think I was the one who was not real." The honesty in it did not soften the tension, but it shifted its shape. Lily exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering just a fraction. "That does not change what you did," she said. "Or what you almost did." Ethan nodded. "I know." He did not try to add anything to it. No explanation. No justification. Just that. The simplicity of it left less to push against. Lily looked at him for a long second, then down at her bag again. Her hand moved over the outline of the lunchbox, pressing lightly, like she was checking that it was still there. "You said you wanted to fix something," she said quietly. Ethan straightened slightly, not stepping closer, just more present. "Yeah." Lily lifted her eyes back to his. "Then do not fix me," she said. "Do not make me part of whatever you are trying to correct." Ethan held her gaze, absorbing that. "What if I want you to be part of building something different?" he asked. Lily's expression did not change right away. The question settled between them, not as an offer, but as a test of its own. She glanced once more toward the SUV, toward the people waiting, toward the version of his world that was still watching even if it had stepped back. Then she looked at him again. "Then you start by choosing without measuring what you get back," she said. Ethan nodded slowly, like he understood the condition even if he did not yet know how to meet it. The tension did not disappear. It stayed there, quiet, grounded, rooted in something deeper than misunderstanding. And for the first time, neither of them tried to resolve it quickly. They just stood there, holding it, knowing that whatever came next would not be simple, and that was exactly the point. Lily did not answer right away. The streetlight above them flickered once, then steadied, casting a dull yellow line across the pavement between their shoes. Ethan did not move closer. He just stood there, hands loose at his sides, waiting without pushing. Then, without another word, he turned and walked back toward the SUV. Lily watched him go, her brow tightening slightly, not confused, just tracking. The two figures near the vehicle straightened as he approached, one of them already reaching for the rear door handle. Ethan lifted a hand, stopping him before it opened. Even from where she stood, Lily could see the shift in posture, the subtle tension of people used to being followed, not questioned. Ethan said something she could not hear. The man shook his head once firm. Ethan did not argue. He reached into his pocket instead, pulling out a small device, no bigger than a deck of cards, and held it for a second before placing it into the man's hand. The second figure stepped closer, saying something low, urgent. Ethan did not respond. He simply turned away. The SUV engine cut off a second later. One by one, the faint blinking lights on the dashboard went dark. The alley seemed to inhale. Lily's gaze shifted from the vehicle back to Ethan as he walked toward the kitchen door instead of returning to her. He pushed it open without hesitation this time. Inside, the last of the volunteers were stacking trays, wiping down surfaces, already halfway into closing. A man near the sink looked up, startled. Ethan stepped forward, his movements steady, deliberate. Lily could not hear the words, but she saw the exchange. The initial confusion, the hesitation, then resistance. The man shook his head, gesturing toward the empty trays, the posted rules, the clock on the wall. Ethan did not step back. He listened, really listened. Then he rolled up the sleeve of his hoodie, reaching into his pocket again, not for money, not for a card, but for his phone. He set it down on the counter, screen facing down, like he was putting something aside instead of offering it. The gesture shifted something. The man paused. Another volunteer came closer, wiping her hands on a towel, eyes moving between them. Ethan stepped toward the sink, picked up a sponge, and without waiting for permission, started scrubbing one of the trays left in the rack. Not fast, not showy, just working. The metal rang softly under his hands. Water splashed, uneven at first, then steady. The volunteers exchanged a glance. No one told him to stop. A few seconds passed, then a minute. The rhythm of closing changed. One of them slid another tray toward him. Lily leaned slightly forward, not realizing she had moved until she felt the edge of the wall against her shoulder. The alley behind her felt different now, quieter, like it had stepped back even further. Through the open door, she could see Ethan working his way through the stack, his movements becoming more efficient, less tentative. No cameras. No observers. Just a man standing at a sink, finishing what someone else had started. After a while, the man who had first spoken to him nodded toward the back storage shelf. Ethan dried his hands on a towel, then moved where he was directed, lifting a crate of packaged food, carrying it to the counter. Another volunteer opened it, revealing sealed portions that had not been distributed. They spoke again, briefly. Then the man gestured toward the alley. Ethan nodded once. When he stepped back outside, he was carrying 2 boxes this time, both sealed, both balanced carefully in his arms. Lily straightened, her fingers tightening slightly around the strap of her bag. Ethan did not hand them to her right away. He set them down on the low ledge where they had been sitting earlier, then stepped back, leaving space between them. They were going to lock these up for tomorrow, he said, not looking at her directly. Now they are not. Lily glanced at the boxes, then at him. You asked, she said. Ethan shook his head. I worked, he replied. It was not pride. It was correction. Lily held his gaze for a second longer, then stepped forward, opening one of the boxes. Inside were neatly packed meals, labeled, portioned, consistent. She paused, her fingers hovering over them, then slowly reached into her bag and pulled out the lunchbox. The metal caught the light, the etched words faint but visible. She set it beside the box, then opened it. Empty. She looked between the two, the structured order of one, the worn unevenness of the other. Then, without speaking, she began transferring the food, not randomly, but carefully, measuring by instinct, adjusting portions with the same quiet precision as before. Ethan watched her hands, not interrupting. When she finished, she closed the lunchbox, pressing the lid down until it clicked into place. Then she took one of the sealed containers from the box and set it aside. That is too much for 2 people, she said quietly. Ethan nodded once. It is not for 2, he replied. Lily glanced at him, something shifting in her expression, not quite a smile, but not distant either. She picked up the extra container and turned toward the mouth of the alley, where a figure sat against the wall, half in shadow. She walked over, crouched down, and set the container within reach without making it a moment. When she stood and returned, Ethan was still where she had left him. The distance between them felt different now. Not gone, but changed. Lily adjusted the strap of her bag again, her hand resting briefly over the lunchbox beneath it. You did not measure that, she said. Ethan looked at the empty SUV, now dark and still, then back at her. No, he said. A pause settled, quieter than before, but not empty. Lily nodded once, slow, deliberate. Good, she said. The night settled into a quieter rhythm after that, the kind that did not erase what had happened, but made room for something new to exist beside it. The alley no longer felt like a place to wait. It felt chosen. Lily stood with her hand resting lightly over her bag, fingers brushing the outline of the lunchbox beneath the fabric, not gripping it this time, just acknowledging it. Ethan remained a few feet away, not closing the space, not stepping back either, holding that distance like it mattered. For a while, neither of them spoke. The city filled in the silence with distant traffic, a low hum of engines, the faint rattle of a shopping cart somewhere down the block. Lily shifted first. She stepped toward the ledge, picked up the lunchbox, and opened it again, the familiar metallic click softer now, almost careful. Inside, the food sat neatly divided, more balanced than anything she had carried in a long time, but not perfectly even. She paused, noticing it, her thumb hovering over the line where she would normally adjust. This time, she did not. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the worn piece of cardboard, the one she had used to measure everything. She held it for a second, turning it slightly between her fingers, then looked at the lunchbox again. Ethan watched her without saying anything, his attention fixed on the small, deliberate movements. Lily exhaled quietly and, instead of placing the cardboard inside, she slid it back into her pocket. The motion was simple, but it changed something. She closed the lunchbox without correcting the portions and turned toward Ethan, offering him one side. It is not exact, she said, her voice steady, but lighter than before. Ethan took it, not inspecting it, not weighing it in his hand. It does not have to be, he replied. Lily held his gaze for a moment, then nodded once, as if accepting something she had been negotiating with for years. They sat again, this time not on opposite edges but closer, not touching, just within the same frame of space. Ethan took a bite, slower, more present. Lily did the same. No counting, no adjusting, just eating. A man passed by the alley entrance, glancing in briefly before continuing on. No one lingered. No one watched. The SUV remained dark, silent, just another parked vehicle now, stripped of its purpose. After a while, Lily leaned back against the wall, her shoulders resting fully this time. She did not reach for the bag. She did not check the strap. She simply let it sit beside her. "You are still here," she said after a moment, not looking at him directly. Ethan nodded slightly. "I said I would choose without measuring," he answered. Lily glanced at him then, a small shift in her expression, not quite a smile, but close enough to feel different from everything before. "That is harder than it sounds," she said. Ethan let out a quiet breath. "Yeah," he admitted. "It is." The air between them settled, not empty, not tense, just open. Lily reached down and tapped the side of the lunchbox lightly, the metal giving a soft, familiar sound. "For two," she said, almost to herself. Ethan looked at the etched words, then back at her. "For now," he replied. Lily did not correct him. She just nodded, once, like that was enough. The night stretched on, not demanding anything else from them, not rushing them forward. Whatever came next would not be built in a moment like this, and neither of them tried to force it. But something had shifted, quietly, permanently, in the way they sat there without keeping score. If this moment meant something to you, share what you felt and stay with us for what comes next. Thank you.